Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Speak the Truth podcast. Today, we're going to be going over the January 6th pipe bomber. I don't believe he acted alone. I think maybe, just maybe, he got groomed online. And today, I'm bringing in the expert, Becca, better known as BX on X. You guys can go over, check out her X account right here. She's been featured on Alex Jones and numerous other mainstream media outlets, for the lack of better terms, because of your work on the 764 network and several other things that you've done out there in the world, which is absolutely amazing. So congrats on everything you've done. I think the last time we had you on the show was what, like 2+ years ago?
It was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, and it was before everything.
Long time.
I feel like it was before everything had exploded, like in your world, about what was going on with all of that. And so I felt like you not only helped our viewers kind of get ahead of the curve when it came to all of the crap that was going online for their kids, but there's a specific reason why I asked you to come on the show today. And it had to do with the new information that's kind of came out about the January 6th pipe bomber. His grandma, number one, says that he's got the mind of a 16-year-old. Number two, it certainly appears as if he's got an online profile of a gay man. And number three, he's online searching for pen pals, which is insane to me that anybody would be doing that. And I think after, realizing and knowing what was going on with this guy, there is reason for me to believe that he was highly susceptible to something that I'm not even sure who coined the term, accelerationism. Was that you that came up with that? Like,
Correct.
Who came up with that?
Actually, I think that the term has been around for a while, but there's a countering extremism researcher named Jade Parker, who I kind of ran across a couple years ago. And she had actually done a lot of this work on actually figuring out what accelerationism is, what it isn't, and redefining it for the modern era. So, in the past, researchers would, when I say researchers, I mean like academics in the countering violent extremism field, right? Or like counterterrorism field. They would have directly associated accelerationism with like white supremacy, neo-Nazi stuff. But over time, we started to realize that it's not accelerationism, which is this concept that by sowing discourse and perpetrating violent acts and criminal acts and political, like chaotic political operations, that you can basically drive a society to a point of collapse. And then, so that's the ultimate goal, is to basically collapse the country, collapse whatever country you're targeting. It's definitely a terrorist tactic, right, in a way, but it's a lot more based around subversion and like trickery. And so what we found out was that accelerationism wasn't a facet of white supremacy. It can actually be used by any of these groups. It can be used by the far left, by the far right, by anarchists, by Satanists, by all kinds of crazy actors who want to destroy society for whatever reason.
Okay, so I mean, when you first saw this stuff that I have up on the screen, did you see that before I sent this over to you?
Yeah, we were digging into the Brian Cole as soon as we got his name, and I think that we all kind of stumbled upon the same stuff at the same time. Travis Hawley, who put out that information, we worked together in the past. He does a lot of really good OSINT research, so
yeah, he does.
We were able to kind of look into everything, and using some of the usernames that we found him in a lot of these weird fringe online spaces, which is something that honestly is not surprising. This is something we see coming up time and time again in these kinds of cases. We see these people who are terminally online, possibly a bit autistic, and they're very engrossed in their online environment. And these are people who are, like you said, easy to influence, easy to push around. They're people who are definitely prone to political extremes, right? So you might see them going from far right extremists in 2010, and then all of a sudden in 2020 they're way on the left for some reason. So these are people who are unstable. They're not very, they're not rational, critical thinking people like you and I probably are. And so that's why we tend to see a lot of these people in these fringe online subcultures, like the My Little Pony fandoms. That's something that comes up a lot And it just indicates that he's part of some of these fringe online subcultures that are proximal to known accelerationist spaces, where these bad actors who are more rationally thinking people, who are more strategic, go and try to find people like that so that they can indoctrinate them and groom them, provoke them to go do certain things that they think will hasten societal collapse. It's like terrorism by proxy.
Right. So, I mean, I guess first let's explain. Because I'm not sure if we've got new people that are joining us today. And if you are, thank you guys for joining us. But when we look at this, what we're looking at, like you said, gosh, my brain's farting on it. What's the name of the guy that ended up digging this up? Why am I brain farting? Travis Howley. Thank you. Yeah. So Travis ended up digging this stuff up, and what he ended up finding was a bunch of his email addresses and everything else. And this one right here, it's his adult friend finder account, and it says, "I am hot for cock." As his screen/username, which is I am hot for cock. And that to me says that he might potentially be into men. All right. And so this was one of those first signs that I looked at and I was like, all right, well, maybe he's into dudes. But we also know that he's an African-American, and inside the black community here in the United States of America, being gay is pretty freaking frowned upon, believe it or not. I don't think a lot of people actually know that, but like it's like you're essentially an outcast in the community, which is what leads us into, this one right here, which is his Interpals account, which is, again, using same email address, him looking for internet pen pals. And when you're bastardized within your own community, and you're looking for internet pen pals, and now we have the statements from, I believe it was his grandmother, saying that he's got the brain, essentially the mind of a 16-year-old. And he's known for being at least mildly autistic. Right. We have a bunch of like communication, basically like personality traits that would essentially drive him into this hole to be separated by himself online. Right. To where he'd be online, right. He'd be bastardized by his community. He's going to be looking for help and things like that, or looking for communication partners. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah. That plus, this was all from years ago too. It should be pointed out, this is a while back, but he's definitely, like I mentioned, what we found an account for, his brony fandom. Like bronies are these male My Little Pony fans. This is something that we see a lot in like modern extremism spaces, believe it or not. I know a lot of people were confused about that. They're like, oh, he must be harmless because he's into like My Little Pony fan fiction. But actually, that's a pretty big indicator that he was adjacent to some online extremist communities. Believe it or not, there's whole lore there behind the bronies, which basically originated on 4chan. And definitely had a Nazi component to it for a long time before finally we kind of started to realize it's less Nazis and more accelerationists that are infiltrating these spaces, which is why you see bronies come up a lot. Like we saw it connected to Peyton Gendron, who committed the Buffalo, New York grocery store shooting and live streamed it. That was the first time I think we saw the bronies come up with ties to like white supremacy and like online extremism. And then from there, what we found was we found a connection between, there was also a guy who I think attacked someone in a George Floyd riot, and he was like on the far right, and he was a brony. And then, so the brony started out as more of like a far right, like meme, right? But over time, what we've seen is like some of these bronies that we're finding now are tied to other weird stuff, like the Satanic Order of Nine Angles cult, which is the accelerationist Satanist group that I think I talked about the last time I was on your show.
Yeah, you were talking about O9A, and my head was exploding as you were going over it.
Right.
And at first I was like, wow, this chick is crazy. And now the FBI is like retweeting you, and like a lot of the stuff that you've worked on has like exploded, like absolutely exploded.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. So yeah, we found those, but we found these bronies too. Within the Order of Nine Angles, there was one, and this same one was connected to the little known third Trump assassination attempt. There was a third attempt, I guess you could call it, right? He didn't actually make it to his location. He was stopped, but he did murder his parents. It was a 17-year-old who murdered his parents and embarked on a cross-country road trip to acquire weapons from shady online individuals and from Eastern Europe. This was a really, like, no one heard about this, which was concerning to me. I don't know why that is. But so we saw the Brony stuff connected to this. And what we're seeing is that it's not necessarily as much of a far right dog whistle now as it maybe used to be. But it does indicate that he was probably on 4chan, immersed in those kinds of subcultures that we know are what would I call it? Patsy pools, and not saying that he didn't do it, but they're looking for vulnerable people like that they can push around and influence to go do things. And so that's why they're in those spaces. It's not really because they like My Little Ponies. It's because they're trying to find someone and groom them to go commit some kind of act.
Yeah, my thought when I see like the entire psychological profile basically of this guy, and then with all the stuff that Travis ended up digging up on him, is it's almost unbelievable to think that this isn't a wide possibility of something that could have happened, like a very large possibility of something that could have happened with this guy. And we look back over time at what was taking place back then. We had the BLM riots that were taking place. We had COVID-19 crap that was still happening inside of this country, and in the DC metro area there was huge protests right around the time. If I pulled up right around the same time that he was doing all of this stuff. As a matter of fact, the stuff that he was purchasing, I put together an entire list of it right here that was from his criminal complaint that they ended up filing on him. And you look at the majority of his purchases, they started in June, and then they pretty much cut off in like September going into October is when the majority of his purchases that went in there. He started buying stuff as soon back as 2019, but it wasn't anything serious. We've got black gauge electrical wire, end caps, some more wire, 9-volt battery connections. Just little things that would give you hints into what he was into. Mm-hmm. But then come June 1, which was right around the time, I want to say the, what's his name, George Floyd incident took place, because that's what sparked the BLM stuff, took place on like May 27th or 28th. And then everything started popping off in DC. And several other places. And then on June 1, we can see he ended up purchasing the galvanized pipes. June 3rd, we see him purchasing the 2 white kitchen timers and all of that stuff, right? Is when he ended up purchasing it. So I guess my question is, how likely is it, in your opinion, that as this stuff was going on, he had already been recruited online? And it might not even be like, a lot of people are trying to blame BLM for this stuff, right? Like they're looking at it and they're trying to say, look, BLM's responsible for this, or they're trying to say, nope, he's a radical right winger and he's responsible for it. I look in and I say it's a bad foreign actor. And because he was buying this stuff all the way back in 2019, that to me says that he was being groomed likely ahead of time by people online, pushing him towards this stuff. And then they just waited for the event to pop off, and then they were able to start tasking him out or start encouraging him to go and do other things. Does that fit in line, generally speaking, with what you've seen about the online accelerationism and whatnot?
It does. And, another pattern that I've seen pop up before, in fact, we just kind of became more highly aware of this pattern with Thomas Crooks, the Trump, the guy who attempted to assassinate Trump, took a shot at him. What we saw with his online history was very similar in that, like, he was like really right wing, really far, kind of a right wing extremist, you would call it, right? And when I say that, I mean, because he was making really violent and inflammatory comments about killing Democrats and stuff. He was like really extreme, like not just like, I'm not using that term lightly. Okay. And so we found out that he, like by his YouTube comment history, that he was pretty far right and very extreme and violent in the past, and that somewhere around 2020, maybe around COVID, you saw a shift in his behavior, and suddenly he was, and before too long, he was all the way at the far left extreme. And so, like I was saying, you see these people moving from extremes to extremes, and we see this pattern a lot where someone like, maybe 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago, was more on the far right, which was what was popular at the time, right? The 4chan and the My Little Pony fandoms and the BLM stuff. And then you see them kind of becoming, oh, now I'm a far left extremist. And that's not just because their ideology is shifting. It's because someone within their environment is shifting the ideology of the environment and they're following it. And so it's a sign that they're in these radicalized spaces that are being influenced by, like you said, it could be a foreign actor. I'm not sure. But absolutely, it is definitely possible that, like you were saying, they have these people who they know that they can influence and provoke to do things, and they're kind of priming them to go do those things. They're foot soldiers for them because they may not even live in the States, like you said. There's a lot of foreign actors who want America to collapse.
Right.
So of course they would use these tactics. It makes total sense.
Yeah, it's funny. I see people too in our comment section. They're being like, he was never far right. And then I see some other people as you're speaking, they're screaming, no, that's nonsense. And so one of the nonsensical things, in my opinion, that I heard,
wait, which one? Wait,
I mean, it's just comment section
Crooks?
over on YouTube. Yeah.
Well, that
who
came
knows
out
when
in
they
his
just type
YouTube
nonsense out,
comment
right?
section.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
a YouTube comment section. But
I can't tell you anything except that's an objective fact that's already been confirmed by it was leaked by Tucker Carlson and his independent source, and then that was confirmed by the FBI as being actually his YouTube account. So there's no, this is not nonsense. It's just an objective thing that happened. And you got to stop playing team sports. People have to stop this. Okay. There is this overwhelming need from people to be like, he was on your team, not my team. My team would never do that. What they're doing is they're playing directly into this division that these bad actors that Matt's talking about want to use as fuel to light the fire to burn the country down, right? It's time for us to stop thinking in these black and white terms and trying to deny, well, he's not one of us. He's not one of us, and start to accept the reality that perhaps it doesn't even really matter, because the goal is for somebody to use that kid like a puppet to go and do things to create false flags or to create political fighting. That's the goal. So there's no reason to deny factual evidence, right? We just need to look at it in the light of, does this reflect on the American right? No, it does not. It does not at all reflect on the American right. That's what we're trying to show you. So that when these like stories come out and you're like, dang, he was on the right. Oh no, what should I do? I'll start lying. Stop doing that. Just start looking at facts.
Okay, so let's talk about this. I believe it was Kyle Seraphin had said that there was basically no way that this guy could have been groomed online, that there's no way that it could have been him because he's autistic, like all of these other things. And for those that don't know who Kyle is, he is a former FBI agent. He also has a slight history with you as well, and a little online back and forth tussle that you all got going on, right? But I find that absolutely ridiculous. Like when I look at that, I find that absolutely ridiculous, because I say, no, this guy is actually a perfect candidate to be able to do that, to where he's functioning. He's not retarded. Okay. It's not like he's not able to do things. Like, people are talking about him going out, walking dogs and stuff like that. Granted, he's wearing Crocs in the wintertime. I don't like anybody that wear Crocs. Sorry if you're out there, but he's wearing Crocs in the wintertime. And they describe him off as kind of like a loner, and all of that, in my opinion, fits in like what his neighbors and family and stuff like that say, fits perfectly into his online profile. So I see all these things, in my opinion, that add up to say this guy was a prime candidate to be groomed online. And yet we have alleged experts that are out there that are trying to tell us that's not the case.
That's really suspicious, because I think that we can all agree at this point that, people on the spectrum, which, and I took really particular offense to something Thomas Massey said about this, who was saying, you really believe this developmentally challenged man was capable of, like, I'm like, well, hold on, you're acting like he's like actually like in a wheelchair with, like, that autism is a spectrum, and everyone calls themselves, that there's this like trend to call everything autism, right? Yeah. A better term would be like neurodivergent, right? People, they were a little bit off. They don't have great social skills. They tend to really find their places in these online echo chambers and just roll into this fantasy world. And that's what we see for almost all of these people like Crooks. Just look at, like, I hate to say it, like, but just look at them, right? Look at these people. The people coming out of the 764 network, a lot of them are autistic, and they're doing some of the most evil stuff to kids that anyone can ever imagine.
That was going to be
so
my next
yes,
question
absolutely. To you. Autism is a huge indicator. Autism, being on the spectrum, being neurodivergent, is a huge indicator that this. Combined with them being terminally online, is a huge indicator that they've been pushed to do something. Because all of these people who are in these My Little Pony fandoms, they're a little off, right?
Yeah.
These aren't the boys you go have beers with at the bar. They're a little off.
Yeah, no, he's a little off. And to me, that's a perfect person. Like, when you're disenfranchised from your own community, like basically when your community has written you off, and you're kind of shoved over there off to the side. And you do have you're functioning, but you might have like a lower level of intelligence. Not trying to insult the guy,
Right.
but you might have a lower level of intelligence, but also highly functioning at the
Intelligence in
same
some
time.
ways. Yeah. So like lower social intelligence, emotional
Right.
intelligence. They're easy to influence, but a lot of times those people are very technologically smart. So it's not strange at all to me that he would be obsessed with building bombs and learning how to do these things while also being neurodivergent and socially awkward and weird. Those things go hand in hand perfectly. I mean, not everybody out there is like a James Bond supervillain who's like extremely intelligent and a mastermind. Those people are rare in society. It's much more common that you get a person who's very socially inept, who's also very good at something else, or you get more balanced types of people who are just normal. I'm not trying to insult neurodivergent people, by the way, like at all. But even like victims who I've spoken with parents of victims of child victims of the 764 network. Their kids have been sexually exploited, extorted, manipulated, groomed, and they will agree that like almost all of their kids are a little bit neurodivergent or on the spectrum in some way. Those are the kids that they look for because they're vulnerable.
So if they're looking for neurodivergent kids, and that's what they're doing, he's vulnerable. And then, in my opinion, I'll put this back up on the screen. This is, again, the list of all of the, bomb making materials that he ended up purchasing according to the criminal complaint. There's something that I noticed that didn't exist on the criminal complaint. They said that it was homemade black powder that he had inside of the pipe bombs. And yet there's nothing in here that he purchased that points towards making of black powder. And like one of the primary ingredients in that is charcoal, for example. And I'm not going to give everybody a class on how to make homemade black powder, right? But that doesn't exist. They didn't put him purchasing black powder at all on this list or anything like that. So just like when we see with, excuse me, wrong scene there. Just like what we see with Thomas Crooks, he had explosive devices, and I read through his criminal complaint. I'm looking through all of that stuff. And I, again, didn't see anywhere where he was going out, purchasing, researching, getting stuff like that for those different explosive devices. Didn't see it. Mm-hmm. And yet we have nothing out of there. And in this case, again, in another high profile incident, we have a lack of the actual explosive device. I mean, of the primary explosives that would have been used, right? Something else that I noticed, and I'd have to put it up on the screen here for people when we go over and we look at it. Let me see if I can find an image of it real quick. Was the way in which those bombs were built. And what I'm looking for actually is the end caps of these things. These are from the FBI, these are from the FBI training models, right, that they have up there. But he had drilled through those end caps and ran those wires inside of there. As somebody that's actually made pipe bombs legally, right, and trained and instructed on how to make pipe bombs legally out of some of those same materials that he has up on the screen, I can tell you that doing that with like any sort of wireless drill or anything like that you're going to get at Home Depot, it's really freaking impossible to do. Like you've got to get a drill press, you've got to you've got to like set the freaking hole, you know what I mean? And then you've got to like slowly grind in there while oiling and doing all sorts of stuff just to get through the dang cap. Like it's not an easy operation to drill through end caps on those things. And then he ended up having like everything mounted on there. And again, when I was looking through his criminal complaint and stuff like that, you would think that it would be one of those things that the Bureau would bring up and say, listen, not only did he purchase these materials, but also over at his house, we ended up finding this, which is good for the construction. You know, when we went over and arrested, we conducted our warrantless search or our search warrant on the property. We ended up finding all of these things that go into making pipe bombs, right? None of that was in there.
Yeah.
None of it.
Yeah.
And that also,
we didn't get much information, in the indictment.
Well,
I know that the forensic trail was neatly laid out, but we didn't get a lot of the circumstantial, like we didn't get the search warrant information. We didn't get a lot of that, I'm sure. I know that I heard buzzing, like, people saying that there's going to be more come out at the hearing, his first hearing. So I'll look forward to that because, again, he didn't act alone. And why would he? Why would he put these why would he put these bombs here just randomly on January 5th without some kind of broader motive, without some kind of broader network, and being part of the plan, being part of that that operation, right? We know how this works. You and I know how this works, right? It's siloed. You don't have everyone masterminding together and figuring everything out. You have pieces and puzzle pieces and people who know very little, and you wind them up and you set them off on their action, and you do the same for several different groups of people, right? And until your plan comes into place. And so he was just part of one broader plan. And I think that what's going to end up being really, really important, the most important thing we can hope to learn, is who he was associating with online at this time. What kind of network it was that was winding him up to do this. Because I do strongly believe that that's what happened.
Yeah. And I look at this and I say, in this case, like the lack of evidence in some of this 100% points to somebody had put him up, somebody had helped, somebody had given him the information. And I don't want to use the term patsy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like they had put him up as a patsy.
I don't like that word either.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
He knew what he was doing.
He knew 100% what he was doing. So is he guilty of going over and placing those things down? Yeah, absolutely. Does he know that putting bombs on the ground is going to kill people or has potential to kill people? Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
But my question is who is the one that is pulling the strings behind the scene? Because that's the real threat, because those people are out there. And I was talking to you about this, like kind of like prepping for it, and you had mentioned that the 764 network, is a hell of a lot smaller than a lot of people realize. Like just a couple hundred, right? Something of that nature.
Probably, I would be really wide with my estimates. Right. I'd say a couple hundred to a couple thousand if you're including like the splinter groups and all the adjacent networks. But,
right, and we're talking about an international community there, right? And so people would look at that. Yeah, and people look at that and they say, well, this is a very tiny group, like when it comes down to things. But what they don't understand is that those people are acting as force multipliers when it comes to the different things that they're doing. So they're able to go out and I'll let you talk on it, if you will, on some of the nasty crap that they do. And so one person can have a very huge impact. If you wouldn't mind talking about a little bit on that to explain that, because
sure. And before I do that, let me just segue real quick about what we were talking about with more information coming out about Brian Cole and stuff. I think that everyone agrees that there was someone else involved, that there were other people involved. And I know that we're coming out of this era of basically an FBI that was run in such a way that the public was being deceived and lied to even. I think that's coming out more and more by the day, that we were being deceived, especially about the events of January 6th. And one of the promises of this new administration was transparency. I would personally really, 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 and I'm just a normal person. I don't work for the FBI. I know people have said stuff because they retweeted me that one time, but I honestly don't work for the FBI. I don't have any insight into that. I'm just a normal person who would really like to see the FBI start addressing these really obvious things, and start being honest and transparent with us like they promised to be about, getting to the bottom of these situations. And part of that would be telling us who this network was and who they were working with and holding those people accountable. Because we can't just keep arresting these autistic kids and throwing them away without addressing the swamp underneath them that's pushing them to do these things that really, really needs to get addressed. As far as the 764 network stuff goes, did you want to say something to that before I go off on that?
Yeah, it absolutely needs to be addressed. And it's kind of one of the shocking things to me about this, because they haven't done that. I mean, they've gone over and they've been like, look, we've arrested this guy right here. We've arrested this kid. And he was responsible for doing this. But the real people that are behind it, that are pulling the strings on all of this crap.
I mean, this was what I've been hunting for years. This is what led me down this path that I'm on now. I started by looking into who's behind all this stuff. Who's the groomer? Who's the person who's pushing these kids to do these things? And so, as I went on, I found that it wasn't as simple as like some big government cover-up conspiracy. It was actually a lot a lot different than I expected it to be. That's what I thought it would be at first, but ultimately what I found was, like you said, foreign actors, chaos agents, people who are just keyboard warriors, who are just another really autistic person who likes to manipulate other people, people who are accelerationists for whatever reason. So, I'd really like to see that take place. As far as the 764 network stuff goes, I know a lot of people have talked about, and all this is another bone I'll pick with the administration, is that they've done a great job of talking about the harm to kids, because this group is notorious for sexually exploiting children, extorting them into doing horrible things on camera. But they haven't really. And I guess I'm saying this because this isn't my opinion. This has already been stated in criminal indictments and criminal complaints against these people, that this is a form of terrorism, that their goal is to corrupt and traumatize our youth, to turn them into monsters, to ruin our kids. I mean, it's a terror attack on our country by hurting our kids. And so when they call them terrorists, when they say this is a tier one terror organization, that's why, because this is a concerted effort to hurt our kids. But in addition to the sexual exploitation, 764 members have also been behind a lot of attempts to coerce and provoke school shootings and other kinds of terrorist attacks. There was a person who was arrested just, I think, back in June, and they just released the charges and indicted him on charges conspiracy to commit murder. He was conspiring with other 764 members to kill something like 10 or 11 school resource officers at his school district and commit a mass casualty attack at his school. So that's just one example of how this network is not just about sexually exploiting kids. They're about provoking and grooming kids to go do violent things as a form of terrorism. And so, that's what I'd like to see them talk about more. That didn't get talked about a lot. Derry, I won't go into my grievances here, but that didn't get talked a lot in the recent resurgence of this in the news that was separate from me. I think that one of the most interesting parts of this, and one of the most important parts to add, is that there's a terrorism component here that has to do with provoking people to go commit violent terror attacks, as opposed to just sexually exploiting kids. I think people need to know that about these groups. And this is just one example of many of these groups that are out there doing this exact same thing. And I know that when I came on your show a while back, I probably sounded like a conspiracy theorist saying this, but this has since been proven. Yeah. I've since I was on your show last.
I was like, this
since
is
I was on your show last, I've been on the BBC, I've been on CBC Canadian, I've been on Australian mainstream news, I've been on Zembla Sweden, I've been on 7 or 8 different international news outlets talking about this. It's very, very real.
Right. No, I found your work
and
very
dangerous.
And you blew up after that. Absolutely exploded. And I know we had a lot of parents. It wasn't one of the most popular videos we did back then, but there was a lot of parents that were made well aware. I mean, you were talking about roadblocks 2 years ago, talking about how kids were getting recruited and all of this stuff was coming into place years ago. Mm-hmm. Before, yeah. And now we've got Roblox being sued this year. Obviously, we had the FBI come out and make major announcements. I think I've seen at least 3 or 4 times the Bureau has came out this year and announced arrests on this network.
There's been 3 or 4 times this week, actually. I'm writing an article about there've been, I think, at least 7 arrests announced just this last week. So
that's insane. Because this was something that years ago, when I platformed you years ago, people looked at that and they said, a lot of people said that this is ridiculous, but when you start looking into it, it's fine. A lot of it, right? And you catch a lot of crap online for it. I see it from time to time, as I'm on X and stuff like that. I'll see people flicking you crap from time to time.
Bad actors, probably.
And you've got the same problem that I've got over here on this channel and everything else, albeit from different groups, to where you'll put out one thing and then you have this massive online network that'll come over and start making false inflammatory attacks, inflammatory accusations, and all that crap. That to me says that there is a deeper rooted issue. And so when I started to see that stuff after the interview, I'm like, there's definitely more to this. You know what I mean? It's a hell of a lot bigger. And so I'm actually happy to see the FBI that's actually going after this. What I'm not happy with, though, is seeing the lack of information on who's actually pulling the strings behind it, and how it almost seems like there is another psyop on top of that to cover up that this kid could have probably been groomed to do the things that he did. That's an issue to me.
Yeah.
That is a major issue to me when I look at.
We have to stop ignoring this. You know, the other thing is that how, like, we're talking about this now. We talked about it during Thomas Crook's thing. We've talked about it before that. And then it gets memory hold and we all just kind of forget about it and move on to the next thing. And we never actually continue to be like, no, we really still want to figure out who was behind this. Like, my whole journey into this field started with me investigating mass shootings and trying to figure out who these online net contacts were. And that led me to this discovery that, like, yes, there's on almost every single case, every mass shooting, every high profile case, there's going to be a network behind it. And it's nuanced, right? I'm not saying that I'm not trying to imply that there's like a shadowy figure out there who's, just targeting one kid and grooming him over the years into a super soldier. Like, it's not even that fancy. It's actually pretty clownish when you're watching it happen. It's what they do is they cast a wide net. They cast a wide net and they do this to tons of different kids and try to get all of these different people to do things until one of them actually does. Okay. So it's way more schizophrenic in practice when you're watching it happen. We watched these people groom kids and do this stuff. And provoke kids into going and committing school shootings. It's very, very chaotic and schizophrenic. And sometimes it's just a kid who's in the wrong place, who's in a bad echo chamber, a bad online subculture where they're surrounded by this kind of rhetoric. And sometimes they do make their own decision to go and do it for notoriety or whatever. So that happens too. But they're influenced by this other group, and there are specific people in there whose role is to do that influencing. So that's what I'm trying to get across.
Do you see them basically suggesting to do these things? Is that more or less what you see? Yeah. Or do you see directing, like telling them, no, you're going to go here and do this? Or is it?
It's a mix of both. Yeah. It's a mix of both. Well, when you say like, you're going to go do this, that implies to me more of like a blackmail extortion angle, which I haven't necessarily seen outright, but I have heard rumblings and rumors of kids that were extorted into doing certain things. So that is also a possibility. And this is an extortion network. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that one of them is being extorted to do something or blackmailed. But for the most part, what you see is, this, like, a great example is Terrorgram, which is it's been deemed a foreign terror organization by the U.S. government. It's an online network that operates on Telegram, and the goal is accelerationism. Like their motto is accelerate the collapse. Okay, it's really obvious. They make these really great propaganda. They make books of propaganda that are stellar. They're great. They're so much better than anything ISIS ever put out. If I saw you'd have your mind blown at how good the propaganda is, right? And then they get the kids in these Telegram channels. They find them from, like, kids find their way from 4chan to Brony fandoms into the Telegram channel for some white supremacy channel. And then from there, they're suddenly immersed in this subculture of online extremism. So Terrorgram is a good example of where, you would have like 3 or 4 people who were like at the top, who were making this propaganda, sending it out, telling these people that if you go and commit a mass shooting, you're going to be on our calendar. They're calling these mass shooters saints. They have them on calendars with their faces, like memorializing the dates that they did these things, and worshiping them like gods, and telling these people that if you go and do something in our name, we're going to memorialize you as a god on our calendar. Like, it's crazy to think that these people exist, but they do exist. And there's been a couple of them arrested, actually. The 2 people who were leading Terrorgram, one of them was a woman. 2 of them were arrested recently, and that was like kind of a landmark arrest because it showed that, like, DOJ actually is finding and prosecuting the groomers, right? The people who are provoking. And I would say that, like, one other thing that makes it complicated. Well, there's 2 things that make this kind of thing complicated. One is that it's kind of hard to find people sometimes, and the DOJ might have to weigh the risks versus benefit, or the pros and cons of chasing after this person who was inciting violent rhetoric, and risking not finding them, or they're in a foreign country, So they might just view it as not worth their time. Another thing is that when they do find them, and they are Americans and they are legal adults, and you can potentially do something to them, it's really hard to overcome the burden of free speech. I don't want to say the burden of free speech, but there's a barrier there that you have to pass in order for them to be able to successfully prosecute you for something you said online. And so, hey, you should go shoot up a school. That'll teach those XYZ, right? Not illegal. There's really nothing they can do about that, right? So when we saw them arrest these people in Telegram, we saw them getting really creative with the charges, and really going to this was a very long indictment detailing specifically all the things that they were doing and saying. There was one specific chat where the Dallas Humber, that's a female who was involved, was bragging about having found an 18-year-old in their channel who was willing to go do a shooting, and she's like, yeah, this kid's really vulnerable. I'm gonna get him to go do something. So they're targeting kids and bragging about it, and that was really interesting to actually see in the indictment, that they were able to arrest this person for terrorism charges, because that's what it is. What else would you consider that? But these are online. These are crimes of speech. Honestly, they didn't physically go out and hurt anybody. Their game is getting other people to do it, and so that's a big problem, and it's hard. It's hard. It poses a lot of challenges from the prosecution side.
So then I guess my next question is, how widespread is this in America? Has it affected all 50 states? Is it only in a couple different states, or is it in specific regions that you notice these people are being targeted?
No, it's all over, and it's international. It's not just American teens that are being convinced to do this. There's there's a huge hotbed in the UK, and also in Sweden and Norway for some reason. In all these Western European countries, there's a lot of activity there too. There's activity in Canada. There's even in Brazil and stuff. We've seen a huge pop off of these kind of things. They arrested a 764 member for planning a mass casualty attack at a Lady Gaga concert, I think it was recently. So these people are doing terror all over the world. It's not just in the U.S.
So I'm going to ask you something that normally, I guess it's not something normal for what I think you would be normally asked when it goes on this situation here. Bring it back to the January 6th pipe bomber and Brian Cole. What do you think the probability is, based on everything that you've seen, that he is a prime candidate to be recruited and to be kind of either pressured or groomed into doing something like this?
All the signs are there. That he's neurodivergent. He's terminally online. He's already been seen to be in these fringe online communities like the My Little Pony fandom. These are all red flags that this person was a prime candidate for something like this. So yeah, so this revelation doesn't surprise me at all. I know there's a lot of people who are doubting it and they're confused, but with this added context, I'm hoping to give context to people of why this isn't surprising to me. I'm not saying he did it or not. I don't know. I don't know any more than you do, and I really do seriously very much believe that what makes a good investigator is keeping yourself open to the possibility of being wrong, keeping yourself open to all possibilities. So I'm not going to say for sure one way or the other, but I would say, would it surprise me if he was the person who did it? No, not at all, especially with the forensic trail.
Well, I
don't know why people are denying that.
Yeah, the forensic trail to me speaks volumes, right? Speaks
Right.
absolute volumes, but that's the other issue that goes into it, of it being a well thought out or well planned operation that this guy ended up doing, that goes right down into he's got some mental health issues that are going on there, or maybe he's not operating at the highest of all levels. Because if you're actually thinking about this, and autistic people are very well known for thinking things through and being able to see a lot of different things. He could have rode the metro down into DC, for example, and walked over there after he left his phone at home, right? There's lots of other things that he could have done to kind of cover up his tracks, but he didn't do it. That to me says it was almost a spur of the moment type deal. He had been doing all of these things.
Maybe somebody promised him immunity, which is something else that we've seen happen in real time with these grooming cases. Specifically, I'm thinking about So I'm thinking about the Nikita Kassev, which is this third Trump assassin that no one knows about. Go follow my Substack. I'm putting out a lot of really great stuff that I think a lot of people need to see, that a lot of people maybe haven't seen. But there was a 17-year-old kid from Wisconsin. What was it, Wisconsin or Illinois? I don't know. Anyways, he was somewhere up there, and he killed both of his parents and lived with their bodies for like 2 weeks while he was planning to steal all their money and embark on this cross-country road trip to assassinate Donald Trump. And he was getting instructions every step of the way by these sketchy, neo-Nazi Eastern European actors, foreign actors, right, who were giving him these step-by-step plays. They were claiming to be in the Ukraine, though we haven't really verified that, because they were clearly lying to this kid. They also, they led him to believe that this was going to be a 9/11 style attack with 10 other attacks happening at the same time, and that afterwards America was going to absolutely collapse, and that they were going to fly him to the Ukraine and make him basically like a prince there. So they had told this 17-year-old that he was going to be given immunity. They were going to keep him safe. They were going to protect him. And so he didn't feel a need to cover his tracks because he was so convinced that he was part of this huge operation to collapse the U.S. and that he was going to be given immunity and protection afterwards. So that's something that we've seen too to consider. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the case here, but that is one thing we've seen in some of these cases is these kids being lied to. I say kids, I don't know, these people being lied to and told that they're safe and that they're going to be given all these things.
Yeah.
And in reality, we know that's not true. They weren't going to fly that kid to Ukraine. Like, that's crazy. These people may not have even been in Ukraine. We don't even know who they are. These were just straight up accelerationists who were trying to wind up a patsy and get him to do something crazy. And they'll say and do whatever they need. They'll lie and coerce and manipulate these people into doing these things.
And so they're not exactly thinking everything all the way through, which is why they go after people that may have some sort of like, I don't want to use the term cognitive decline, but what is the right term? You used it earlier, neurodivergence. Like
easily influenced
people that are disenfranchised and all of that's going out there.
Yeah.
And I hope that, like at least the course of this investigation down to the January 6th pipe bombing, that they would be able to look at it and say, look, here's the other stuff that we know, because they've done forensic analysis on his computer at this point, right? They've pulled all of that stuff. They've looked into all of that. Didn't somebody say that they were assigned to like tracking him all the way back in 2020? I
don't remember. Oh,
yeah,
well, what the official story was, what Pam Bondi said, I think it was her, was that this investigation had been opened back in 2020, 2021, and that they had all this evidence already, but it was closed inexplicably for some reason, and they shut down the investigation and they didn't pursue that as a suspect. Then what the FBI says is that several months ago, under mounting pressure and the fact that the statute of limitations was about to expire, they dedicated a lot more resources to going through all of the files and re-looking at suspects who were previously dismissed, and that's where they found it. So they said that they didn't have any new information. It was already there. They just needed to look at it with a fresh set of eyes. So hopefully more about that will come out, and that we'll have someone held accountable for botching that investigation, because that's really an unacceptable outcome for the FBI.
To me, it's like, what fresh set of eyes do you need to look at it? The man was in the area. He drove into the area. His cell phone pinged at the appropriate times. There's cameras that show that he was over there. So why wasn't it looked into a little bit further?
Well, the obvious explanation is that it turned their narrative on its head, because it was again, we don't know we don't know anything about his political leanings yet.
I don't even
but
know if he
were,
to be honest.
Yeah.
Or
if their narrative was that this was a white MAGA supporter that did it, and they don't want it to come out that it was like a black Antifa person, I could see them trying to bury that. I guess is my point.
And I mean, you look at when he ended up purchasing all of his stuff, and there was people that were pointing out saying that, well, this man ended up thinking that the election was stolen and everything else. And I want to put this back up on the screen and show this to people, because I mean, maybe they don't know, but election day is what, November 4th. And so
where was the source of that though? I'm hesitant to believe anything right now.
From allegedly allegedly from his confession and talking with the Bureau, information got leaked that he had believed that the election was stolen. But here's the problem that kind of goes into that is he purchased all of this crap by and large, looking at the BLM riots forward and moving into October. And the only thing he purchased in September and into November, he had one purchase in November, and it was for 14 gauge electrical wire, which is nothing. And then in December, he purchased some steel wool at Home Depot. Other than that, he didn't buy any additional stuff until after the inauguration of Joe Biden on January 21st. He purchased a kitchen timer with 2 9-volts, and then some more pipes and an alligator clip, whatever. So for over the course of like 3 days. But what I noticed in the way that he ended up buying some of this stuff is you have June 1, where he ends up purchasing the galvanized pipes at Home Depot. Then June 3rd, he purchases the kitchen timers at Walmart. June 8th, he purchases additional galvanized pipes. June 20th, he purchases some end caps, which maybe he screwed up his other end caps. And then July 8th, he ends up purchasing more end caps. And then after that, it's basically electrical wire and some steel wool. And so, but he had been purchasing these things according to their thing for
over
so long.
time.
But if he was so pissed, and this was motivated by what he deemed to be a fraudulent election, and that's why he was placing the bombs, that doesn't track because he was purchasing this crap way beforehand, which is why I say that, you're grooming this guy ahead of time. You're setting him up, you're having him do these different things, and then you wait for something that you can exploit. And to me, when you have a situation that is being exploited like that, when you're exploiting a weakness inside of a country, that speaks to a foreign actor. That's what that speaks to me. Or a very violent insurrectionist here inside of the United States that just wants to cause mayhem. And for some reason, this is not something that's being talked about on mainstream media. This is not something that anybody looks into. They just go, oh, look, we have the receipts and we're done.
Yeah.
And it's not,
and then people are going to assign whatever political party they don't like to the blame, and they're going to twist the truth to try to get it there no matter what. And people are losing the forest through the trees, and they're never actually getting to the truth of the matter, which is what we're trying to do by digging further. Right. I didn't mean to say that he was like necessarily Antifa or one of these groups, although we know that that if like what you're saying is true, and I do believe it is, that there's foreign actors who are trying to provoke these things. It makes sense that those foreign actors would also be infiltrating political extremist movements in the U.S. I think that would be the main thing that they would do, because what you're trying to do is to exploit the fact that Americans are very politically charged, right? Americans are politically charged. That's how we are. We're two-sided, right? You're either this side or you're that side for the most part. Now you're looking at these people who tend to bounce between extremes, and you're saying bounce this way and come right here where I can have you in this, this Telegram channel or this Discord server. And then it doesn't matter who you are. You could be a foreign actor who's in an Antifa chat trying to. So it's very complicated and really hard to get a handle on. The only way that we're ever going to know these things is if we actually still have information about his online associates and the lead up to this, and then we'll try to figure out who those people are, if the FBI or DOJ even cares. I hope they do. I hope that this is a big enough situation that they actually do care enough to pursue it and give us more answers than this, because I think we all know that there's more to the story.
Yeah, and I point to Thomas Crooks. No evidence whatsoever that he ended up purchasing, doing any of those things as far as explosive devices go. He did not have them armed when he climbed up on the roof to go shoot at Trump. He hadn't armed the explosive devices. That tells me that he wasn't really familiar with the operations on it. That's something that he would have ran through in his head time and time again. He had the transmitter on him, or the detonator, if you will, had that on his person. But again, it would have been and done no good for him because he hadn't armed the actual device itself. And very similar to this situation, right? In that one, he was using a mixture called Animal, ammonium nitrate, nitromethane, and aluminum powder. And then this one, we have homemade black powder with some steel wool. I mean, those are very simple mixtures. And so I see a common thread here between the two of them, which are These are very low like purchasing thresholds. That's not going to set off of a lot of alarm bells when it comes to like buying the precursors and stuff like that for them. And they're all found in some very commonplace home items that you can get. Right? We're not talking about making like TATP or anything like that, right? Or NAC. We're talking about just basic stuff that you can take, mix, and it's ready to go. And that to me is another huge clue that footprint is going to be even lower. And then you give that low footprint explosive device to somebody else to use and let them go get caught, let them get in trouble, let them be the ones that are putting that stuff out. And so it all, again, points to foreign actors to me. Mm-hmm. So it's troubling. Okay. So if people want to be safe, obviously you had brought up your Substack and several other things where people can go over and follow you, which do recommend people go over and take a look at your Substack. Other than that, if you were to give advice to like people, mom, pops, everybody else that's concerned out in the world, excuse me. Wow. Good job, Matt. If you were to give advice to people, what would you give them on how to keep their kids safe, I guess, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I would say that one thing that all of these people have in common, especially the really younger ones, is just unlimited internet access and a lot of times unmonitored internet access. So there's a lot of things that we could do. There was a bill that was just kind of a bipartisan bill that was just proposed with a lot of good proposals for stiffening sentences for these kinds of people, and also for making it specifically a crime to try to coerce children into self-harming, which I think is a no-brainer. Hopefully that bill will get revised and passed. But there's a lot of things that we can do as parents. We are the number one deterrent to this. Not only because your kid could be the victim of one of these groups, they could be sexually exploited, but your kid could also become an abuser. They could also be trying to provoke your kid to go commit a mass shooting. And I've actually talked to parents of mass shooters in length, and all of them have the same basic, like, my life is ruined. Like our family is shattered, and we had no idea that this was happening. We have a stable family, and we just didn't know, right? Now that we know these harms exist online, we can monitor for them. Basically, just don't let your kid use Roblox. There's no reason for them to be on any kind of platform where they're
really
talking to adults. It's so bad. It's so bad. I mean, the whole concept is that strangers can come talk to your kids. Like, even though they've limited, now that Roblox is getting sued, they've tried to put chat features that limit the amount that kids can talk to adults, but they'll still come in with their character will have a swastika on it, or it'll say, "I love CP," or something ridiculous. And these people from the public are just going up and chatting with your kid's character. There's no difference between that and sending your kid off to a downtown area to talk to strangers. These people are using these platforms to look for kids. So don't let them on it. Just don't. Your kids shouldn't be talking to strangers online at all. And then, when your kids get old enough to talk to them about extortion and sextortion, you need to make sure that you're having an open conversation with your kids to make sure that they know how to stay safe, that they know the consequences for sending like a nude or sexually explicit photo to somebody, that they know that people online can pretend to be anybody, because we're seeing also, aside from 764, we're seeing a rise in this sextortion scams by these like Nigerian scammers who are pretending to be teenage girls and getting boys to do this. And then we're seeing astronomical suicide rates from this. So talk to your kids and educate them about this stuff. Teach them ways that they can keep themselves safe. Make sure your kids know they can come to you if anything happens, right, without judgment. Things like common sense things to keep your kids safe online. Because ultimately, if we starve these people of victims, that's a really great way to fight this. You have to look at this so differently from something like ISIS, right? Because these people can't exist without a victim pool, without a pool of influenceable people. And so if we can help our kids build resilience to these online harms, we can basically starve this entire network.
Well, that's what ISIS is essentially like flipping script and doing now. Like, they've learned that they don't have to infiltrate the United States of America, that they can go to online. And so I think like the new wave of terrorism, the new way forward here, at least in the United States, is going to be through online manipulation of people and doing things like we've discussed with.
And they've already been doing that. I mean,
yeah, they did.
ISIS perfected the online radicalization strategy already. And we see some of those tactics being used today by these same acceleration of cells that we're talking about now. So for sure. But what I mean is that like, this is completely decentralized and very stochastic in nature. There's not like an organized structure behind it necessarily. Anyone and everyone can participate. Anyone who wants to see the U.S. fall can go and do these things. And so, but they need a catalyst. They need the fuel, and that fuel is your child. So keep them safe online.
Yeah, no kidding, right? And it's no surprise that in this case, we have a guy that has the mind of what his family says, a 16-year-old that is accused of doing these things right now. And again, I'm not saying he's innocent. I think all of the actual evidence, like you pointed out, points directly, yeah, he did that. But my question is the one larger, which is how do you continue to keep America safe? It's like treating a symptom versus like getting rid of the disease. And we're not looking at the disease. We're just trying to throw stuff on the symptom right now. And that, to me, is a major issue. And I don't think it's just ISIS. I look at countries like Russia, China, and Iran that are trying to influence things over here in the United States of America. We had Iran all the way back in August get named by DHS and said that they tried to conduct deadly plots here in the United States of America. Like failed ones. Like, is this what they're hinting at? You know what I mean? That they could have came out with back then. I don't know. All right. And then a lot of people also don't know you're, and this last tidbit before I cut you loose, you're also a professional shooter, or used to be a professional shooter, right? Professional, was it 3-gun or 2-gun?
Yeah. I'm a long time competitive shooter, trying to get back out there, start doing it again. But it's kind of how I got started on all this
because
stuff.
you have, I looked and it's pretty sure that's a gun safe in your corner. And then I see that box that's like right up along that gun safe. And it almost looks like a box of 9mm, like that elongated. Like, are you getting back after it?
No, sorry for the mess. I'm actually, we're moving finally. It's actually been a long time coming. It's been a really, really hard time to move, but we're making that happen. So but I still am gonna keep shooting and keep going out there and.
Well, cool. Well, congrats on your new place.
And I'll post videos. If you follow me on X, I'll post videos of the competitions when I go.
Yeah, like people coming after you are absolutely retarded, like going over and trying to take them down. Ladies and gentlemen, Becca BX on X, expert when it comes to the 764 network, expert when it comes to pretty much online radicalization and everything else in the world. If you guys want to learn how to keep your kids safe, go over there, follow her on X, subscribe to her Substack, check out all the work she does. It actually is amazing. I wish I had more time myself to be able to dig into a lot of the things that she does because it's mind-numbing, the amount of dirt that she actually digs up on these people. And some of it's ridiculously disturbing. Like digging through some of the stuff you post. I've seen a lot of crap and there's only so much stuff that I'm willing to take. So like I can only imagine the toll it takes on your brain. So thank you very much for joining us today, Becca. Appreciate you, and we'll most certainly have you back sometime in the future. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Bye-bye.
Of course. Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Speak the Truth podcast, and I'll see you guys again tonight. Look forward to it. If you haven't yet, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Peace, love, happiness, and God bless.